Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sustaining the Herd. We're excited to be back with our second episode. I'm your host, Brock Vitek, joined by my co-host, Andrew Wadle.
Thank you, Brock. Like Brock said, I'm Andrew Wadle. I'm the Director of Innovation and Sustainability at Secchi Agri-Services and Engineering. And being our second episode, I just wanted to kind of remind everybody what the mission of Sustaining the Herd is, and that is to educate people in matters of sustainability, particularly when it comes to animal agriculture. And with us today is Patrick Serfass, who is the Executive Director of the American Biogas Council. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Andrew.
What I was just wondering if we could do is just for our audience who might not be familiar with biogas and renewables, and if you could just kind of just give us a 30,000-foot view of what is biogas.
So if you take a pile of food waste, or you take a pile of manure, or really any kind of organic matter, it's got microbes in it already. That's why if you set out a bunch of hamburger meat on your countertop, you let it sit out overnight, it gets that gray film on the top of it, and then it starts to smell. Maybe it smells a little bit like ammonia. Those microbes that are already in your hamburger meat and that we would eat if we cook it, if they have a nice warm environment and are starved of oxygen because they're in the middle of a pile of organic material, they will naturally eat up the organic material and burp out methane. This has been happening in nature literally since the beginning of the universe. It's one of the most basic microbial functions in the universe. And if you take that natural process and you just engineer a nice warm environment for lots of organic material that reproduces lots of microbes to recycle a lot of organic material and capture all of that methane in the biogas that gets produced from those microbes, now you've got a biogas system. So it's really just a way of using a natural process and creating an optimized environment where that natural process can flourish. And as the result of doing that, you get to capture methane that would otherwise go into the air if it was uncontrolled, if it did not get recycled in a biogas system. And then you use that methane, which has energy in it, and you use it to displace fossil fuels. You can use it to make renewable electricity. You can use it to make renewable fuels for vehicles. You can use it to make renewable gas for your home or business for heat.
And just taking that another step forward. So if we were to produce methane from manure, how does it differ from methane that you would say traditionally get out of the tap at your stove?
It's indistinguishable. Now, there is a little bit of processing that happens from the raw biogas to the gas that comes out of the stove. But basically, the gas that comes out of your stove is like 98 to 99% methane. And the biogas that comes raw out of a manure biogas system, for example, is 60% methane, 40% carbon dioxide. If you take out that carbon dioxide and 1 to 2% of some other stuff that's in there, you're left with that 98, 99, 100% methane. At that point, a methane molecule is a methane molecule, except for one came from deep in the earth, and that's why we call it a fossil fuel. And it came from dinosaurs. And the other was renewably produced from our waste that humans or animals made.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for folks to know that when you go to turn on the stove, you could be getting you could be cooking with cow gas just as sure as you could be cooking from gas from fossil fuel sources.
Yeah, you sure could. And that really makes it easy to use because it's a drop-in replacement. You don't have to have a separate distribution system. Any place you use conventional natural gas, you can replace it with renewable natural gas. And that creates a huge opportunity because we've got all kinds of industries using natural gas. You've got all of the folks that produce power, all of our power plants. A lot of them run on natural gas. You've got vehicles, a lot of trucks, a lot of UPS and waste management, WM, that hauls and collects a lot of garbage, have two of the largest natural gas vehicle fleets in the entire country. They can all be replaced with renewable natural gas. And actually, they already are. They're also some of the largest renewable natural gas fleets. But then you take things like cosmetics. It's really hard to make cosmetics without heat. heat that comes from natural gas. Well, you can lower the carbon footprint of your cosmetics if instead of buying conventional gas, you buy renewable natural gas, and on and on and on. So any of the places where you can buy conventional gas, you can replace it with renewable natural gas. And what we're doing in the country is creating the policies and the permission for your utilities, like if you buy gas for your home or for your business, to have the choice to buy renewable gas instead of conventional gas. Just like at least in my home here in Washington, D.C., I choose to buy renewable electricity instead of our grid mix of electricity. But I don't yet have the opportunity to buy renewable gas, but you can at the corporate level, especially if you're a large buyer. That gives you it gives you other options that we don't yet have at the residential level, but we're getting there.
So when it comes to other renewable energy sources, what makes biogas derived from anaerobic digestion, say, different than others?
Well, for one, we're a gas. So that means that we are not a liquid. Although just like natural gas, you can liquefy it. And some people are doing that. They're liquefying the natural gas and sending it over to Europe, where there's a much larger demand for liquefied natural gas, or might be used for shipping. But in the case of electricity, we can make electricity just as much as we can make fuel that goes into the gas pipeline. And so if you're looking at just biogas derived, or I guess electricity derived from biogas, and you compare that to electricity from solar or from wind, it's the same electrons. It's the same electricity that's going into your house, except for the way that you make it is much more reliable from a biogas system than it is from an intermittent system like wind or solar. Wind, or I think solar's capacity factor, that means how much, if you have a solar panel, how much of the time over a day or year or month, how much of that time are you actually getting electricity from that solar panel? It's somewhere around 20%. And so that means you have to buy and build 5 times as much solar to get the same amount of electricity that you would from a biogas system that was the same size as your solar array. And so the reliability of biogas becomes really, really important, because if you need electricity 24/7, or you need to have electricity exactly when you need it. Like, let's say you're a city and everyone comes home from work and turns on their televisions, and maybe in the summertime turns on their air conditioners. And that load for the city, the need for electricity spikes. But the sun's going down, so you don't necessarily have solar to come into there. Maybe the wind's blowing, maybe it's not. We have a project in Minnesota that stores their biogas all day long and waits until the city needs that extra boost of electricity for that spike that happens when everyone gets home from work, and it dumps electricity onto the grid, makes a bunch of money doing it too, because it's helping everybody out, and helps to also shave those peaks. So, it's the same electron, but the availability of it from a biogas system is going to be much more consistent, much more reliable. And that's a really important thing for a lot of people using electricity.
Well, so that's really interesting, Patrick. And so when you look at the American Biogas Council's role in putting all these pieces together, what is your mission in terms of moving the whole idea of renewable natural gas forward?
Well, we look at some of the problems that we need to solve as a society. We look at all the organic waste that is produced in the US. So we've got 66 million tons of food waste that we produce every year. We've got the wastewater from 31 billion gallons of wastewater that gets produced every day from everyone that flushes their toilets and sends stuff down their sink every day. And then we've got about 8 billion cows, chickens, turkeys, and pigs. And that's a lot of organic waste that we have as a society. What are we going to do with that? And yes, you can compost, and you should compost some of that, but there are a lot of places where that material is created that are just in such large volumes that composting doesn't work everywhere. And good news, composting is very complementary to biogas systems. They actually work very well together in tandem, where you take the energy out from the biogas system first, and then you can compost the material. And so if you only have two ways to recycle all that material, biogas systems and composting systems, well, shouldn't we build a lot more biogas systems and composting systems to be able to handle all of that? Shouldn't we be able to use all the renewable energy we can produce from that material? So that's why the American Biogas Council exists. We want to maximize the amount of that organic material that is recycled and turn it into biogas so we can have renewable energy. And then a fun fact, that material, once it's been digested in a biogas system, that material that's left over, the digested material, has lots of nutrients in it. Your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium that farmers need, and gardeners need too. I use it in my garden here, and I use it on my lawn to top dress in the spring. And all those nutrients can go back into the soil, and those also displace synthetic fertilizers. So you've got methane emissions that would otherwise be emitted from all this organic material. And then you've got fossil fuel being used for all kinds of energy. We get to replace that. And then you've got fossil fuel used to create synthetic fertilizers, and we get to replace all that too. And it becomes this nice circular system of recycling that exists. And the American Biogas Council wants to make as much of that happen as possible so we can recycle our material and provide all those environmental and economic benefits that come along with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I will say that, of course, I'm happy to give a plug for American Biogas Council. You folks have done a tremendous job. When you look at the number of people that attend the meetings, there is a tremendous amount of buzz created around biogas when you consider back, we'll say, to the early Ag Star days, when it would be a matter of 100 people in a room and not many of them doing projects, compared and contrasted today, where you guys have 1,000 people or more, right? And many engaged people doing really, really serious projects.
Yeah, well, we started there too. We started with 20 companies that were getting together at one of those small conferences at lunch, asking, hey, what are we going to do to help this industry thrive? What are we going to do to make sure that policy gets developed to help this industry to thrive? And we now represent over 400 companies and about 5,000 people working for those 400 companies. They're all working together to do all these things that we talked about: increasing organics recycling, increasing the production of renewable energy, and increasing soil products, all using biogas systems. And yeah, we're expecting almost 2,000 people at our annual conference, which will be May 13 to 16 in Savannah. So we'd love to see anyone there who is interested in biogas. It's the place to be.
So, in when you think about, we've had this transition from when there were just maybe 20 people in the room to where there's now many people in the room. Something has evidently has changed within the landscape of the industry. And can you just describe where the revenues are coming from for say producers? Where they sell renewable natural gas. Where's the money coming from in terms of LCFS, RINs, et cetera? Can you just kind of give us an idea of what that's all about?
Sure. Well, let's look at it from the perspective of someone that owns a biogas system, and we can use a farm-based biogas system as an example. We have biogas systems at wastewater facilities and standalone food waste producers or industrial food waste, and so wastewater, food waste, and farm-based systems are the most common. And then we've got landfill gas systems as well. And so let's look at it from the perspective of a farm-based system. If you're a farmer building a biogas system, you already have manure, and that manure doesn't cost you anything because it's being produced, but you might have costs associated with the bedding for your animals. And you want to make sure, if you're a dairy farmer, for example, comfortable cows make the most milk. So the bedding material that is healthy, so it doesn't keep pathogens in it, and is nice and comfortable for the cows. That's what you want. But it costs money to buy that material. And it costs money to buy the feed for your animals as well. And often you grow a lot of that feed on your property. So, but your manure is free. And so if you can take all that manure and put it in a biogas system, now you are not removing any of the nutrients. All the digested material still goes back onto your land, but now that it's been digested, it's actually better to be absorbed by crops. So we find that crop yields are somewhere between 10 and 30% higher, which is an incredible jump for any kind of margins on a farm. Crop yields that are 10 to 30 times greater with digested material as fertilizer rather than synthetic fertilizer. So now you're growing more feed or more crops if that's a revenue producer that's going off the farm. And now if you take some of that digested material, just the solids part of it, so the liquids and the nutrients, that goes into the soil, but the solids part of it, and you dry it out, it's like sawdust. Well, sawdust is one of the bedding materials that you can bed your animals on. So now you can replace the cost of the bedding for your animals. And we haven't even talked about the renewable energy part of it yet. So you're already creating a positive economic cycle within the farm. You have to change some of the operations of the farm, but you have some cost saving measures already and some production boost potentially from your crops. Then let's add in the renewable energy portion of it. So the biogas part of it, you have to decide what you're going to do with that biogas. Are you going to displace the heat that you need on the farm or electricity on the farm, or are you going to sell it externally? Most farmers are going to sell it externally because you can make more revenue that way. And if you are making renewable natural gas, you can both sell the molecule to someone who needs renewable natural gas instead of conventional gas. But there are also some programs in the US that allow you to generate credits that you can also sell in addition to those molecules, environmental credits to reward people for generating renewable fuels. And those credits are worth something too. So from the biogas, you can normally sell the molecule itself plus a credit, or sometimes two credits, two different types of credits associated with it. And that becomes the biggest revenue source generally from the biogas system. So that's just for a manure only system. But then you can add an additional layer on to this, and it becomes more complicated, but it also potentially becomes more profitable. Let's say that you are delivering the milk every day, like most farmers do, and you're delivering it to a cheese processing facility that's nearby. So all your milk is going to make cheese, maybe ice cream or something like that. Well, if you're making yogurt, cheese, ice cream, whatever you're making with your milk, there's a waste water that comes from that process. And that wastewater needs to be dealt with someplace. Well, what if as a farmer, you send the milk in one direction and you bring the wastewater back into the farm and you put that into your biogas system? Well, that wastewater from the milk that you delivered, making it into cheese or ice cream, that wastewater has energy in it. The whey in it that doesn't make it into our yogurt and our ice cream and cheese, that whey has energy in it. You put that into the biogas system and now you're making more biogas. So more molecules that you can sell and more credits that you can sell. And guess what? That cheese manufacturer probably before had to pay someone else to take their wastewater. Well, now they're paying the farmer to take their wastewater. So now you're getting revenue in from taking someone else's waste, but you're also getting revenue from the extra biogas that produces. I mean, who doesn't love a business model where you can get revenue on your inputs and revenue on your outputs, and maybe some cost savings in between? And then maybe some of your other neighbors who are also doing food processing realize that you can handle other materials besides just the manure in your biogas system, and they hand you their leftover or their waste products from their food processing. Maybe it's Dole making canned fruits and vegetables and the leftovers from that, or the wastewater from cleaning their facility. We have a project in Baltimore, near Baltimore, that's doing that. Well, that also, you get paid to take in that material. It's called a tipping fee, and then you can produce more biogas. So, it's not simple. It's not, hey, I'm putting a solar panel on my land, and now the sun's going to shine, it's going to produce electricity, I'm going to sell those electrons, and maybe I'll sell a credit along with it. That's really simple. But we're talking about a whole ecosystem here, and a whole ecosystem of benefits. And so if you can integrate a biogas system into that ecosystem, well, then you're going to start getting benefits of all different kinds environmentally and benefits of all different kinds economically. And you get that to work well. And that's why this industry is growing so much. We're solving problems and producing profitable businesses in the meantime.
Patrick, thanks for that great background on the RNG ecosystem, as well as helping us understand a lot of the driving economic factors. I'm curious, could you explain to us briefly the revenue landscape from selling biogas as we think about both compliance and regulatory type of markets and what we might call the voluntary market?
Yeah, so a compliance market means that someone has to buy what you're selling, or someone has to buy something to comply with some kind of a regulation. And so in this particular case, we have two compliance markets in particular that really relate to the biogas industry. One is a national market that says that anyone selling or blending gasoline or diesel in the US, if you want to keep selling and blending gasoline and diesel, there's a certain amount of renewable fuel that you need to purchase every year to encourage the renewable fuel industry to develop, and so that we are not just a fossil-based economy. That program is called the Renewable Fuel Standard. And there's also a program in California called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard that says, similarly, if you are buying or selling gasoline in the state of California, you are producing carbon emissions, and so you need to buy a certain amount of credits to offset the carbon emissions from your fuels that are going into vehicles in California. And that is designed to be able to reduce the carbon emissions in the state from the transportation sector. And in both cases, you have oil and gas companies paying for their environmental impact and encouraging the renewable industries to help offset the negative environmental impacts with positive environmental impacts. And these are both market-based systems that the oil and gas companies end up paying for, and the renewable fuel producers end up getting paid for. And so those are how the credits work that I mentioned earlier. So if you are a biogas producer and you're generating credits, at some point they're being purchased by an oil or gas company if you're talking about those two programs. And that's part of what helps to create enough revenue to get a return on investment for the capital cost for building your biogas system. So that's a compliance market. And the good thing about those two compliance markets is that they are market-based and they work really well. They're really encouraging not just biogas systems, but they're encouraging a wide variety of renewable fuels and the use of renewable fuels in vehicles. And that's great. And it can be very profitable. But those markets being actual market-based systems where the demand is what the state or the government says needs to be bought, and the supply is the production of renewable fuel, those supply and demands change, and that creates volatility in the marketplace. And so you can really have high rewards. You can have, if natural gas has costs as low as like $3 to $5 a million BTU over the last 12 months or so, you could sell it for like $9 to $50 per million BTU using some of these programs if you line everything out right. And that can produce incredible profit. So these compliance markets are really attractive. Okay, they are variable, and so there's risk associated with that, but also high risk. So it's kind of high risk, high reward situation. The voluntary market is totally different. The voluntary market is companies like a L'Oreal that's making cosmetics, or an AstraZeneca that's making pharmaceuticals, or anyone else that is currently using conventional natural gas and might choose to buy renewable gas to lower their carbon footprint because that's what their customers want, or that's what their investors want, to be listed on stock exchanges or stock indexes that reward environmentally responsible and socially responsible companies. To lower your carbon footprint, you might be already choosing to buy renewable electricity. Well, if you need to lower your carbon footprint more, you probably need to replace your gas with renewable gas. And so companies that are voluntarily choosing to buy renewable gas are doing that on a voluntary basis. And when they do that, they want predictability. Those customers of the renewable gas want predictability. So they are willing to sign long-term fixed price agreements. So in the essence, in the compliance markets, you have short-term contracts, high variability, but high risk and high reward, high profitability potentially. And on the other side, on the voluntary market, you have longer-term contracts, low variability, low risk, and longer-term certainty. And the mix of those two markets is really, really attractive to companies who are trying to manage profitability and also manage risk. So we see companies that will be involved in both markets. And then sometimes we'll see companies that are only involved in one because they're really aggressively trying to drive profit. So maybe they're more active in the compliance market, or they're really risk averse. And so they're trying to focus only on the voluntary market and maybe slightly lower returns, but much lower risk too.
Definitely. Thanks for all of that, Patrick. Very interesting discussion. One follow-up to that before I pass it back to Andrew. Could you tell us where these markets might be going? And specifically, I know more states other than California have a low carbon fuel standard program or some form of it. Washington and Oregon being two. I know that New Mexico is now rolling out a program. And how might these new markets entering the market affect prices and revenue opportunities for biogas producers?
Well, they'll definitely increase opportunities because this is new supply, or sorry, this is new demand. This is new demand for renewable fuels in each one of these states. But these states have different market sizes, right? New Mexico is probably the smallest of all the four markets that you mentioned: California, Oregon, Washington, and New Mexico. Nothing's bigger than California, right? It's the world's fifth largest economy on its own. So we're going to have more opportunities to develop more renewable fuel systems. And yes, while we're excited about the biogas portion of it, it's important to note that all these clean fuel standard programs impact pretty much any kind of renewable fuel producer, all transportation focused. So I expect that the clean fuel programs will increase opportunities for new biogas systems to be built. They'll decrease the carbon emissions associated with the transportation sector in that state. And so far, we're seeing that gasoline prices aren't going up just because of these clean fuel standard programs. And so that's kind of like a win-win-win. But these programs are generally only focused on the transportation sector. And there's so many other parts of industry and other parts of the economy that need to be decarbonized as well. And so it's important that other policies besides just the clean fuel standards are developed to be able to decarbonize the other parts of our economy. And that's where the voluntary market comes in, because the voluntary market is not just transportation focused. It's anyone who wants to buy renewable gas instead of conventional gas. And I think we're going to see an increase in electricity production, whether it be for electric vehicles or for homes as well, because the reliability of the electricity that can be produced, or the reliability of even heat for homes from renewable gas, I think that's starting to get recognized more and more as well. And with more recognition, you're going to see more growth.
Yeah,
definitely. I think we're starting to see that. Andrew, anything you would like to add to this revenue discussion?
Yeah, on the positive side, it just seems like the demand is really growing. And so there's lots of opportunity. And so let's just look at it the other way. What kind of headwinds do you see that we could be facing, just to kind of put it out there on the radar for all of our listeners?
Well, one of the headwinds that we hear, one of the criticisms that we hear is that, well, can you replace all the natural gas in the United States with biogas? And the answer to that is no. And we don't shy from that. But that's kind of a good thing. If we produce so much waste that we could replace all the natural gas in the United States with just biogas made from waste, I mean, we already have a large waste problem. It would be significantly larger. So it's kind of good that we can. I think the question is, biogas doesn't solve all of societal problems, but it can solve and help with a lot of them. So isn't it worth it to be beneficially using that waste? So I think that there's just some education that's needed to be able to understand that even though biogas isn't the silver bullet for all kinds of solutions, it's a really important one. And it's one that our society needs to be able to manage our waste. If we don't manage it with biogas systems, how else are we going to manage all of this waste? I think one of the other headwinds, which is also just educationally based, but it's a little bit more obscure, is we have some groups in the US that, I think years ago were promoting vegan diets. And they have learned that trying to push Americans to eat vegan, I think we have like 6% vegans in the United States right now, pushing an all vegan diet across the United States, that wasn't really getting a lot of reception. And these same groups, which are really against animal agriculture at the core of it, have noticed that biogas systems help to make farming a lot more sustainable. And so we're helping farmers to be more sustainable, but we're helping farmers. And if you are against animal farming, well, then they've decided, well, we're going to be against biogas too. But it's crazy because they call themselves environmental organizations and they're like fighting the industry that's helping to increase sustainability in agriculture. So it's really ironic and sad. But, some of those groups, if you complain about something that people don't know about, then the people who are hearing them, how else do they know what's right and what's wrong? So we've got a big job as an industry to be able to teach folks about a lot of what you're already listening to, which is the benefits of biogas, and to learn that so that when someone comes at you and says, oh, biogas systems make more emissions, no, they don't. We're capturing methane emissions and replacing fossil fuels. Like, this is better. We're replacing synthetic fertilizers with natural fertilizers. We are making renewable fuel for transportation, right? If you know that, then you hear some of these lies that are coming out from some of these groups that are anti-animal agriculture, and then you can sift through it and tell what's right and what's wrong. So the good news is that we've got facts and data on our side, but there's a lot of education to do. And I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is the more people that know about biogas systems, the more interest there is and the more that get built. And that's good for our economy and it's good for our environment as well.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute win-win because Brock has heard me speak loosely about the people in town. And the people in town who are buying our products, this is what they want, and most of them aren't vegan. Most of them are drinking milk, eating meat, and this is what they want. They want environmental sustainability. They want food producers to be doing the right thing, while at the same time, what is proving out to be a fantastic revenue source for the producers. And so I feel like that everybody's a winner in this particular situation when it comes to producing biogas.
Yeah, I mean, it really is most of the time, and it's really great to see more recognition of that. And it's important that we create ecosystems where you can make money for doing the right thing for the environment. There's so many ecosystems that are out there that allow people to make money for not doing the right thing for the environment. And man, I love this part of my job, to be able to get up every day and promote things that are helping to create good paying jobs for people of all kinds of educational levels. Like, they're complicated systems because they're natural systems and you have to kind of keep them alive. But it's not rocket science. And they're good paying jobs to run and build these systems. And I love the fact that we are creating an economy that is based on that and doing good things for people, keeping family businesses in business, and helping to protect the environment while they're at it. That's good reason to get up every morning.
Yep. Well, you guys are doing a fantastic job at it. And you mentioned in the beginning of when we sat down, a couple meetings coming up. But I want to give a shameless plug to American Biogas Council. And so I attended my first ABC meeting. I think it was 3 years ago. I don't remember the venue, but or the city. But I remember, well, let's just say we all go to lots of meetings, right? And after about an hour, we've drank enough coffee and the sessions get kind of like blah. and you end up back at the hotel room working on emails because otherwise you're kind of getting farther and farther behind. But the American Biogas Council meetings, I must say, they are fantastic. There were breakout sessions. I was wishing I could be cloned to be in them all. And so that was my first introduction to ABC. And we've been strong supporters and have become members since then. So again, we really feel as though you're doing a service to the industry. And so go ahead and, if you would, Patrick, just tell us about these two upcoming meetings and kind of what the difference between the Biogas Americas and the Business of Biogas.
Happy to, and you'll be happy to also know that we've made them even more fun than the last time that you were there. So we've got fishing and golf and lawn games and things that happen, and even operator training that happened before the conference really kicks off. And this year in Savannah, we're going to have our riverboat cruise with I think 2 or 3 bands and different food on different levels. It's going to be so much fun. So you're going to be able to get some business done and a lot of learning done while having some fun too. So first, you should come to Biogas Americas in Savannah, May 13 to 16. And then you should come to the Business of Biogas in St. Louis, October 22 to 24. And Biogas Americas is the huge trade show and conference. It's the largest biogas trade show and conference in North America, and it has been for the last several years. The expo is twice as big as it was last year. So we are really excited to be able to bring so many people and so many businesses together. So it is everything. It is everything in the industry. About 2,000 people and a couple hundred exhibitors will be there. The Business of Biogas focuses more on developing biogas systems. So if you're interested in developing a biogas system or shopping around for one, you want to know, how do I put these policies into place? And I know these different financing options exist, but how do I actually use them? And what's wrong with the biogas systems that have failed? And what was really right with the ones that were super successful? The Business of Biogas really digs into that. And it'll be really nice. It's at the Four Seasons, St. Louis. And it's actually not that expensive, but it is just as nice as you'd expect it to be. So that's a fantastic venue that we are returning to after being there last year. It's going to be awesome.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for joining us today. And thank you very much to my co-host, Brock. And thanks for joining the Sustaining the Herd podcast. And we'll be back with you in 2 weeks with another episode.